Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the session about the initial public offering at the Research and Innovation Days. And as a tradition on a stock exchange says, we will start by ringing a bell. So first the countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ringo! Woo! Please sit. My name is Agnieszka Stasiakowska, and I'm in the European Innovation Council team leading the business acceleration services. What we are trying to do is to help companies that received funding from the European Innovation Council. So far, already 5,000 companies handpicked that went through a very thorough evaluation procedure and got funding from the EIC fund, and now are developing the innovations. What we are trying to do is to bring them closer to the investors, to the markets, to the potential clients. And of course, an initial public offering is one of the way of going forward for the companies with the funding. If you would like to see and know more about the community of the 5,000 EIC companies, check this freshly published report, Innovation Kitchen. We have more copies here, and you can download it also from the EIC website. What I would like to say, you heard the bell. For many companies, this ringing of these bells is a very strong symbol, a symbol that they actually reach a certain maturity level. But at the same time, it's an uncertainty whether the predictions regarding the capital to be raised on a stock exchange, whether it will actually realize. When we think about the initial public offering, we think about big companies, billion dollars, euros valuations. But in fact, it's also available for smaller tech companies. And this is what we will hear today. Not a lot of companies, tech companies, startups, in fact, take into consideration an IPO as a possibility for the financing. This is mainly because there are a lot of misconceptions about it. It's a lengthy procedure, it takes time, it's only for the big companies, as I said, the owners will lose control, the public will know everything about your figures, etc. But what we would like to, what I would like you to hear today, and what our experts will tell us, is it the reality? Is it only the myths, or is it the reality? So we have together here with us representative of 3 stock exchanges. I have a slide presentation here. We have together with us Camille Leca from Euronext in Paris. We have Barbara Lunghi from the Borsa Italiana. It's a part of the London Stock Exchange Group. And Jesus Gonzalez, a director in the Madrid Stock Exchange. Welcome. And also representative of 2 companies that actually did an IPO, tech companies that went public on a stock exchange. So we have Cecilia Driving, who is a CFO of Biovica. Biovica develops and commercializes blood test biomarker assays that improve monitoring of modern cancer therapies and better predict patient outcome. Biovica is a beneficiary of the European Innovation Council. They received the funding in 2014, and in 2015 above 600,000 euros. And they did the IPO on NASDAQ in 2017. And we have today with us Sebastian Waldeman. Thank you, Sebastian, for stepping in. Normally it was Alexandre Sabundzijan foreseen to take part in this panel. However, he's blocked in US, some cancelled flights, so he couldn't join us. But Audio Valley, so your company, is located just next door here in Brussels, so it's a local company. So Sebastian could step in very quickly and join us here. So thanks again for this. So Audio Valley, it's a company that offers digital solutions, audio digital solutions, like, for example, audio and video broadcasting, and also a platform for artists for all type of media projects. And they went public on both Euronext in Paris and in Brussels. And Sebastian later on will tell us a little bit more about his experience. What I would also like to say, when in fact an IPO in Europe is doing better and better. We have more and more companies doing, tech companies doing an IPO. So in fact 2018 was a very good year, 44 IPOs that's raised $4.2 billion capital. We had two very big IPOs like Farfetch, that's a 1 billion euro IPO on the London Stock Exchange, and Adyen on the Dutch Euronext. However, IPOs represent only 2% of the financing rounds being done by the tech companies, and only 10% of all the capital flowing into the ecosystem. Again, why? There are misconceptions. The companies are also, like, it's a natural thing, follow the already well-paved track, so they go more for the VC capital. But there are also requirements and barriers on the regulation side. And here, in fact, Euro is making a step to make it easier. So in 2018, the EP endorsed a new legislation and created the SME growth markets, which is a new trading venue dedicated for small issuers, for tech companies. What it brings more proportionate rules to support SME listing, while at the same time safeguarding investor protection and market integrity. And in fact, going public pays off, because what we see is that, according to a study developed by Mind the Bridge, the tech scale-up IPOs, the listed scale-up rise amount 5.5 more amount of capital than other startups. But let's start with what our experts have to say. Camille, can you tell us why a tech startup scale-up should go for an IPO opportunity?
Sure. Yeah, sure, I'll try. So today, all over the world, tech companies represent roughly 70% of new IPOs. And that figure is pretty much the same in Europe. So why all those companies are turning to the market? There are different reasons for that. The first one, the most obvious one, is financing, because IPO allows you to raise funds at the time of the IPO, but obviously and also after the IPO on a very short time basis, and you can raise significant amount of cash to finance your growth and your development of your business. So that's the main reason, but that's not the only one. The second one, which is very important as well, is liquidity. When you get listed, your company, allows the shareholders to sell at a fixed price, fair price, well-known price, at any time the shares that you own. So for funding partners, for historical shareholders, or for even employees that get shares, it's a very good way of getting exit. The third main advantage then those tech companies are looking at is credibility. By being listed, you are entering into some kind of a new world. You are more visible and more credible partner for your suppliers, for your clients, for attracting new employees, and this is very tangible. We have some companies that do come to the market because they do not need money, but they need to make a point and show that they are serious. I remember a Portuguese company, they had a lot of cash, didn't need exit because it was a family business, but they wanted to be able to be a supplier to NASA in the US. So, there are different ways of looking at it. And maybe the fourth biggest reason that we can put forward is professionalism. When you are listed and on your share, you mentioned that you get a lot of requirements. You have to be transparent. You need to disclose a lot of things. You need to publish your accounts and give clear views on where you are going. But this is actually very profitable for a business because you have to have a clear vision on where you're going. You have to have a strong management team. And in the long term, all those things pay off.
Thanks. And so maybe, Cecilia, you could tell us a little bit what was your story with your IPO? How did it happen? And also maybe what was the role of the funding that you received from the European Innovation Council in this way forward?
Yes, the funding we received from EIC made it possible for us to enter some clinical trials here in Europe, and also the thing that we got the funding from the EIC and they've gone through all the evaluation made the investor community to realize that we had a really good project. So it has been fundamental in the fundraising after that. And we did a pre-IPO in 2016 and raised 3 million euros. And then afterwards in March 2017, we did the IPO at Nasdaq Stockholm First North, and then we raised 6 million euros. And we have also raised money after that. This spring, we did a directed share issue.
Okay. So as Camille said, you can in fact continue raising money, issue more shares.
Yes, we are a biotech company and there's a long way to the market, and you need to have a strategy for financing as well as getting to the market with the products.
Mm-hmm. Barbara, could you explain us what is the listing process in a nutshell, very quickly?
It's not easy. In a nutshell, I tried to send the slides and explain all the details, but they told me it was too long and that we don't want to create too much awareness around the listing process. But anyway, in a nutshell, there's a preparation phase in which you should prepare your company to be ready, to be suitable for a public market, which could be a little bit different from dealing with private investors. Then there is a due diligence phase where all the actors involved in the process, like law firms, account firms, the investment bank, are all committed in the due diligence to assess the suitability of the company for the market. The engagement with the investors, and I will spend a few words on that, because we advise the companies to have an early engagement with investors even before the proper marketing phase. And then there is the process with the authority, which is different in every country, and as well it depends on the route you choose for the market, if you choose a regulated market or a grow market, a junior market. And the engagement with the authority, both the stock exchange and the local authority is different, and it could take a couple of months for the regulated markets, while it is definitely shorter for exchange-regulated market. And then the proper book building process in which you engage with investors, you raise the orders, and you set the price in the final evaluation, which is a negotiation with the investors. And at the end of the process, you may go for a retail offering. Retail is a price taker, and at the end, you ring the bell. An early engagement with investors is very important to build a proper trust, to build a relationship, to engage investors for the long term and understand as well the ones that are aligned with your objectives. As well, it is very important to prepare your business for a public market, to work on your strategy, to prepare a proper business plan, which should be reliable, deliverable, and as well understand if the company is suitable for a public market. Work on the governance, work on the management and information system, understand if the structure is proper, prepared to deal with a public market life.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Sebastian, I would like to ask you, how it went for you, for your company? What are the steps did you take? With whom did you work? And I would like to show maybe some photos from actually your listing
in Brussels, yeah.
Ceremony with Brussels. Yes, we have Benoit van den Hoven here also had the photos. So yes, tell us how it went for you.
As you mentioned in the beginning, it is quite a long process, I would say. As it is a long process, what is very important, it was very important for us in the beginning, is to set up a good team, because as it was already mentioned, you're going to work with the law firms, You're going to work with a bank, with a consultant, what we call a listing sponsor, and also with a financial communication company. And so it's very important that you trust all these various stakeholders. And then I would say it's a long process. It's an iterative process which begins to set up during the due diligence period. You have to set up what we call a prospectus, which can be very, let's say, very detailed, depending on the complexity of your company. So I would say for us, from the moment we decided to go public until ringing the bell, I would say it took more or less 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also depending on the size of your company, you don't have to, let's say, you have to take into consideration the amount of work it represents for the people. For example, in our case, we are, let's say, more or less a 150 people company. So it's a big amount of work of various different people within the company, and so it's a period for an SME which is let's say quite strange, and not it's not the kind of process not the kind of decision that you take in a second. You have to think about it and be well prepared to do it.
Okay. And for you, Cecilia, how long did it take for your company?
It took about 5 months, but you can say that we started to prepare even before that. I joined the company just 4 months before, so I was in the more intensive process of doing it and getting us there. But it's a very good process for a company to think through what you do and why and how you're going to go forward. So I think it's not only a hurdle; it's really good for the company as well.
To rethink your strategy.
Yes, and be clear about what you're doing and how you're going to deliver to the market what you say you're doing, your milestones and everything forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Jesus, I would like to ask you, because on average it takes 7.7 years from an inception of the company till the moment when they are making an IPO. Can this be done faster, in your opinion?
Well, average is quite a misleading parameter, so it depends on many things. I should say shortcuts don't work. So the company, my fellows have just told us, the company must be well prepared, and be prepared means not only in a technical way or with a good corporate governance, with a good financial team, communication with next shareholders and so on. I mean, this is, I should say, the technical part that can be speed up with a bit more of training and education and mentoring. All our exchanges have started programs to help companies to train in this, like pre-IPO programs. All of us has something like that. No? But in my opinion, the important thing is not that. The important thing is the company is mature enough to attract investment or not. And it depends a lot on the sector. You cannot say, for example, for going public, the company should have X million of revenues, because you get biotech companies with no revenues at all, or very small amount of revenues. So it depends. It depends also because of macroeconomic situation, even on fashions. Investors are also attracted by some companies and others. So, and this, in my opinion, is the most important thing, the maturity of a company in terms of show that they have real, actual revenues or milestones that have been achieved and are reliable for the investors. It's not only a question of telling about how nice is my company, but to have a real experience. And this cannot be so easily speed up.
Talking about fashion, so what is à la mode right now?
We are now in a green world, so
Ah, yes, the
everything color green is on fashion. Tech companies, no, biotech companies, but sometimes it depends. Hair companies on fashion definitely. No? But no, I mean renewable energies. We have just have a company in our stock exchange that with making recyclable plastics, bio plastics and so on. This is on fashion, definitely.
That's a strong message to all the companies that are exhibiting just here in front of the building now. Okay, I would like to ask Camille, for what profile of company is the IPO?
Jesus told a bit about that, but
Yes.
In the stock market, we are not looking at specific criteria like number of employees, turnover, how long ago you were created, because it doesn't make sense. What stock market investors are looking at is what we call is your equity story. And your equity story is basically the messages that you're sending to the market about what you are doing, where you want to go, and how you're going to do it. So this is more that is important than how much money you are making today, because depending on sectors, depending on companies, depending on investor appetite, that can vary. But you have to be selling growth perspectives. But if I want to be a bit more pragmatic, I would say then you need to raise some money, because you need to have some money publicly available for trading on the market if you want your listing to be successful. So you would need to raise at least 15, 20 million. There are exceptions, of course, and because companies are doing that for very good reasons. But that would be some kind of the average size of what we see on the market. So we have a lot of companies that list today and that are worth 40 million, 50 million, 70 million. So that can come quite early in the process when we look today at the funds that can be raised through VCs or private equity funds. So stock market is not only for large companies. 80% of listed companies are actually SMEs.
Mm-hmm. And Barbara, tell us, because there is also this conception that once you make an IPO, the owners will lose control, everything needs to be public in a company, and that this is a burden. If you're not public, then you can maybe move faster. If there is a hiccup, well, no one will know. Now everything will know. The whole world will know. You need to make everything visible. So what would you say about that?
Well, let's say the control in itself, it depends on how much you put on the market. So there are a number of companies that are putting on the market 10%, 20%, 30%, so they don't really lose control in the general assembly. But anyway, a public company should be transparent, should share their plans and results. And so what really, and there is as well an appetite for growth. So you are forced in a way to think in the long term and bring growth to investors. So once you share the values related to an IPO, related to being a listed companies, and you share the opportunity that Cecile mentioned, to have the possibility to raise money on the market, even with follow-ons, if you have appetite to raise your profile in a public market, if it brings you talents and appetite for growth, and the price of transparency, of sharing your plans and results, of being subject to more regulations in terms of price-sensitive information, for example, is not a burden anymore. So you have to balance your objectives with the discipline that being on a public market brings. And sometimes disciplines and transparency encourage companies to reach results in a more efficient way.
Can I I fully agree with what you have been saying, and I would go even one step further. Actually, doing an IPO is a way of getting some independence and some freedom for the management, because you don't have one or two or three VCs at your board that are kind of sometimes intrusive in the way you conduct your business, but you've got a diluted base of shareholders. So the price you have to pay for this freedom is transparency. But actually, an IPO is a way to get back some freedom for management. And companies often tend to forget that, and they even have the impression that it's the opposite.
It's kind of related of what I wanted to ask to you, Jesus, is so the stock exchange is, of course, a platform for exchanging the shares of the company. What are the other added value that the stock exchange brings to the companies?
Yeah. Well, my colleagues had mentioned a number of them. No? I should say that when coming to the finance growth, which is after all which most of the people here is willing to hear, no? How can I finance my work, no? my worth? The important thing is that, or the differential thing is that you cannot only raise money, I mean cash, but also you will have an instrument to consolidate, to buy another companies, paying them with your own shares through a capital increase. This is the secret weapon, no? Of listed companies. The consolidation of a sector, and in Europe we have a lot of sectors that need consolidation. Can we speed up a lot, paying the other company acquisition with their own shares? That's very interesting. And
how is it called, this process? How do you call this process?
Technically, it's a non-monetary capital increase, but I don't know how to call it in two words. I mean, you change shares. I mean, you exchange your shares for the shares of the other company. Okay, and also one thing that I think is very important nowadays is to attract talent and retain talent. I mean, when a company is listed, it is not only because the credibility of the company, as they mentioned, raises, but also because people is easier to get involved in the company if you pay them a part of the salary in shares, or you make up an option program, an option for all the shareholders, for all the employees, or just the management, or both of them. I mean, that's very interesting. Many other things also, the liquidity, not in terms of daily volume, but the ability to make money for the founder, or for a VC, not only in the exit but later on. It's a very powerful thing. For example, not so much in technology companies, but family-owned companies in many sectors, also in technology, but not so much. Is more for the families. It's more convenient that any member of family can exit at any time. You don't need to quarrel about that. At what price? Well, you just sell your shares in a blog or whatever. So there's a number of things. Yeah.
So attracting talent, media, independence. So this is all that is actually associated with an IPO. Cecilia, in fact, I wanted to ask you how it works for you. So what is the life after listing? And I also would like to show a little bit of the photos from your listing ceremony, Biovica on NASDAQ. So you actually get the name of your company on in the New York, yes? And that's a very symbolic thing. And some other photos from the listing ceremony. But so what is the life after listing?
It's clearly a little bit more complex with all the regulations we have to follow. And it's not every time so easy to see how you should do this, because you have to be transparent and everything. And it's not really easy to do it the right way. Sometimes there is no right or wrong. You just have to go on what you think is the best way to do it. And that's really a problem, because normally you would like to have a yes or no. But it's so much gray area in this. sometimes. And of course, we have had a lot of people applying to us after this, and it's just becoming more and more people coming to us and want to join us, the company. That's a very good thing. But when it comes to visibility, we are more visible in some areas, but we should really want to have more media attention, and that's not really that easy when you're such a small company as we are, even if we are on a mutual trading facility. So I think we would like to attract more bigger funds and stuff like that, but we're not really there yet. So it's not that easy to be an IPO company with our market capital.
Okay, so it's in fact you need to communicate constantly with your investors.
Yes.
To maintain the price of the shares or increase.
But it's actually not with the investors that is the problem. It's with the media. We should really. We want to attract them, but it's not easy because they have so many other companies to watch. So, but in the end, probably.
Is there something that the stock exchange can do about it? Are you doing something about it? Are you helping companies to reach towards the media?
Media and investors, particularly. I think we all organize forums or encounters, investors' days between companies and investors, different kinds of sectorial or geographic or whatever. But I should say that we can help, but the main task is on the company. It should be the company that has a clear communication roadmap and invest money and time in investor relations. Yeah, I think it's essential. If it is the way, we can help a bit, but to be honest, this is the task of the company mainly.
So we actually support companies in their, not in the media activity, but in the investor relation activity. We felt the need, being a local market populated by Italian companies, and the challenge to reach investors globally. We proposed to the companies an international roadshow. So according to the size, we bring those companies to US, Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore. So trying to scout the pool of liquidity that could be interested in the different companies according to the size and sector. With the media, I guess it's more a challenge for the company. I believe that companies are getting a lot of attention from financial media, from financial journalists, maybe the business journalists maybe are more difficult to get, but financial media are, well, in my experience, are covering a lot, even smaller companies. Yes.
Yeah, I could only emphasize what my colleague said. It's very important that listed companies invest time in investor relations, because at the time when you're going to need the market again to raise more money or to sell more shares, to sell blocks, you will need the investors and the analysts to rely on you and to believe you. And so you need to communicate when it's going well. That part is not too hard. But you also need to communicate when it's not going well, which is not the part that CEOs and CFOs like the most, but it's the most important one, because in the end, it's a trust relationship that you need to build with the market.
I do fully agree what has been mentioned. Trust is very important, and also communication in whatever way, investor relation or participate to investor relations even, because I would say more than the share price, what is really important for such small capitalization as we are, is the liquidity, because it's also what the investors are looking for. They bought shares from your company, but at a certain moment they would like to trade it, so they need to find people who are interested to buy it. And it's very important that your company is known, that when you meet investors, they already know your company. They're going to be interested in there, and so you need to participate as much as possible to various events or communicate as much as possible in order just for the, I would say, financial world to know that your company exists and that it's not falling out of the blue.
Sebastian, in fact, I wanted to ask you, because you're a Brussels-based company, and you also did an IPO in Paris.
Yes,
Why
that's correct.
Paris?
Yes, so initially we went public in Paris in July 2018. Why Paris? To be honest, because for such a, let's say, a small capitalization as we are, there were no real, let's say, I would say, actors interested in this kind of IPO in Belgium. When I say actor, it's banks. If you're, for example, a company who is trying to raise, I don't know, 50 or 100 million euro, you will find banks who will be interested there. In our case, we were, let's say, trying to raise around 15 million euro. It's much more difficult. In Paris, there are a lot of, let's say, a lot of, first of all, funds, so money, who are interested in medium and small capitalization, as we are. And so there are a lot of, as the money is there are a lot of companies who are working on this kind of deals. So it's listing sponsor, funds, banks, of course, who are working on that. So that's the main reason. It's not because we didn't want to be in Brussels, just because it was much easier to find, let's say, and to set up a team with in Paris and in Brussels.
Mm-hmm. I would like to ask you all a final question. Basically, what we could do to make this IPO opportunity more visible for the companies. And when I say we, it's how, you know, the European Innovation Council, European Commission could work together with different stakeholders in the ecosystem to make it more visible, to boost, let's say, the IPO opportunities in Europe. And before we start, I just wanted to well, we're already doing something towards it. So, as I mentioned, within the European Innovation Council, we have this business acceleration services when we help companies financed by the EIC to link with investors, corporates, with potential clients. There's a lot of, let's say, education there in terms of what is possible for the companies, coaching, which strategy would be the best for them, but also actual matching with the investors. And we organized already an investor matching event together with Euronext and with Nasdaq. I would like to show you a video from this event. So if I could have a video playing with. So, Camille, you were present there. Can you tell us a little bit how it went, this event?
It went very well, and actually it was a very good idea of EIC, because the advice we would give to companies and to their ecosystem is that IPO is a topic that needs to be addressed and discussed quite ahead of the actual IPO process. So it's very worthwhile having this discussion and learning more about IPOs way before a potential IPO, because you wouldn't negotiate a VC round or shareholder agreement the same way if you think that maybe one day you would go public. And so I think that's what EIC is trying to do, because they have a lot of very interesting companies that they're supporting, and so they want them to start thinking about what's coming next. So we had last May 40 European EIC-supported companies that went in our Paris offices. And it was a very interesting day because we get to meet them with some private investors, but also some public investors, for them to understand a bit what is different in terms of perception and expectations. We also organized a serious game, which is basically putting everyone in the shoes of a company going to the road of an IPO. So people were playing the founder, or the wife of the founder, the P in the capital. So, and they were asked questions all along the way, and how they would manage valuation, how they would manage financial communication. So it's very interesting, and I would encourage any EIC-supported companies to take part in this type of trainings, because it's good having in mind, how it works and what you should be doing if you want to get ready for that.
Mm-hmm. So I will repeat maybe my final question. So what can we do together with the ecosystem, different actors, stock exchanges, investors, companies, accelerators, to make the IPO opportunity more visible?
I'm sorry.
I should underline that we need more investment, more investors. We should focus any available effort in raising more funds, taking the attention of public and private investment funds into microcaps, into tech companies scaling up, because we lack of them. To be true, there are a few of them quite active, but not enough by far to feed up those 5,000 companies in the IC world. So lobbying with authorities, attracting funds through tax incentives, taking another twist on the regulation to allow more money from for example, pension funds to invest in this kind of companies should be a must.
I totally agree. This is the challenge, the main challenge. You mentioned the grow markets, which is actually a very interesting initiative to build a proper regulation for markets dedicated to high growth companies. But the main challenge in Europe against US as well is to build a proper ecosystem dedicated to scale-up companies, being tech companies or even small-sized enterprises not in the tech space. Any jurisdiction, any country has its own legislation, its own fiscal incentives. So we've seen different ecosystems all around Europe. I think the challenge is to establish a proper pool of liquidity dedicated to these companies, and then the ecosystem will follow. Because we definitely need more dedicated investors.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
totally agree.
Sorry.
At European level.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I think also an important message, something which has already been said, the biggest part of the company which are listed are small or medium companies. So going IPO is not only for the GAFA, it's for all kind, even small companies can go there, and it's let's say it is a decent way, it's a correct way to finance a company, and you don't need to be a multinational to go there. So it's a kind of demystification of this process.
Thanks a lot, because this is exactly the message we want to pass today to all EIC-funded companies, but also to all companies around Europe. Camille?
And if I may, as entrepreneurs, consider all your options. IPO is one financing and growth option, so look at it. And if your advisors are pitching against, challenge them, because private equity today, they do not necessarily are incentivized to go and exit from an IPO that forms their own personal business model. So as entrepreneurs, you need to look at all the options.
Mm-hmm. Cecilia, would you like to, any ideas how we could work together with the ecosystem?
I think what already has been said is a very good options, and I think it's crucial to have the investor community there to pick up the companies coming to the stock exchanges. Mm-hmm. And in Sweden we have that. It's quite good. So we have been oversubscribed in all our issues. already,
Okay.
even if we are just a small company.
Thanks a lot. That was our final question. What I really note is that so more investors, attracting more investors to Europe, and on the company side, it's about educating and making the IPO opportunity more visible for those companies. I would like to thank you very much for coming today to Brussels, and you for stepping in, Sebastian. This is the end of this session. I have a very, very good news for everyone here in the room. So the cocktail will start, and the big news is it's not the mock cocktails, it's the real buzz. So, please take this opportunity to network and discuss further. And I will finish this session by ringing the bell again. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Cecilia, for coming. It was really